Hello, Abnormal family. Good to see y'all. It's now October 2nd today, and I really hope y'all will enjoy this encounter. I really enjoyed the other night with y'all on the Boots on the Ground and the Breakdown channel when we had the call-ins. I really like that, bringing people on the channel and talking to you. I think you're really going to enjoy this encounter, guys. It's out of Alaska, so let's get into it. I have lived in southern Alaska with my family my entire life. My whole family has stories about our property, and I've decided to share them. These stories are spread out over the 11 years that we've lived there. I don't remember the order, so I'll be telling them as I go. I will be using fake names for everyone and just the first initial of friends and pets. The first story that comes to mind about this place is the voice in the woods. Our property is 50 acres and about 75% of it is woods. My siblings and I would spend hours out there, but now we rarely go there at all. Now, I have a very large family and we all live on this property except for my two oldest siblings. I live here with my grandpa, mom, dad, older twin sister, two little sisters, and two little brothers. The first time we heard the voice, it was just my little sister, Allie, and me. I was 13 and Allie was 11. The weather was warm during the middle of June, and we wanted to ride on our dad's black four-wheeler around the trails. We were on the other side of the property having fun, and we even stopped for a moment to play in the river. Then we started to smell something bad. So bad that it made me gag and stop the four-wheeler. I smelled like a rotting animal that's been sitting in the sun for a week. We didn't want to know what it was that was dead and didn't want to stick around. I had started to drive away down another trail when I heard Allie yell my name. Lynn. I stopped the four-wheeler and turned to her to see what was wrong. But she just looked at me confused. When I asked her what, she said she hadn't said anything. I feared it was just in my head, but before I could continue driving, we heard it again. Lynn. I could feel Allie's body go still behind me as she stared ahead. Something called my name in Allie's voice, and it was coming from the front of us, where the smell was. I immediately felt the fight-or-flight response in me, along with the reaction to protect my little sister, and I turned around as fast as I could, flooring it back to the house. I nearly flipped the four-wheeler twice and almost hit a tree. I felt like something was watching us as we were leaving. Our dad saw the way I was driving on his new four-wheeler, and I got in trouble. Neither Allie nor I told our dad what happened because we didn't want him to think we were too scared to be playing in the woods by ourselves anymore. I didn't go back into the woods for a few weeks. The second time we heard the voice was when we were all in the woods except for my older brother. It was me, my two older sisters, Mary and Renee, and my two younger sisters, Allie and Jolene. I was 15 this time. Mary, Renee, and Jolene were on our grandpa's six-wheeler. Allie was riding our mom's four-wheeler, and I was riding our dad's. We'd been out there for a while, and we were racing when we knew we weren't supposed to. We were also on the other side of the property again. That way we couldn't get caught. Allie was close behind me, and Mary was in front of me around the turn. She was waiting for us to catch up. As we sat there listening to Mary brag about winning, we all heard our mom yell, "Girls!" Thinking Mom was finally home from the store with dinner and needed help bringing in the groceries, we sped to the house, slowing down before we got close enough that she could hear us so we wouldn't get in trouble. When I got there, Mom was just getting out of the car. We parked our four-wheelers and got off, walking over to our mom. We asked her why she called us and what she needed, but she looked at us strangely. She told us she had just come down the driveway and didn't call us. She wasn't at the house when we were called. Then I realized something that made my heart really turn and race as my blood ran cold. Even if Mom had been at the house, there's no way we would have been able to hear her from the other side of the property, especially with the two four-wheelers and the six-wheeler running. I didn't tell my sisters about it because I didn't want to scare them. The last time I heard the voice was only last month. I'm 19 now, and I had a falling out with a close friend who had been to my house many, many times in the past. I'll call her N. It was 8 in the morning, and I was heading to my Jeep, about to leave for work. Purse on my shoulder, full coffee cup in hand. I was ready to go. Then I heard Ian's voice coming from the woods. Help! I stood there for a second, confused, and just staring into the woods, waiting to see if it would really happen again. Was someone on our property? But soon as I felt panicked and quickly got back inside because something about that voice was familiar. Other than the fact that it was Ian's, I felt uneasy. Ian hasn't been to my house in 3 years. Something about the voice was wrong. It was as if it were whispering, but it was a calm whisper, not the way someone would be calling for help if they needed it. The voice also didn't sound organic, like it was a recording. But not from a radio or a phone. It didn't make any sense because I didn't hear it again. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. I ended up running to my Jeep like a scared little kid, locking all the doors once I was inside. I took one more look at the woods and I didn't see anything, so I left for work, driving a little faster than I should have up the driveway. I loved telling my coworkers all the scary stories about my house because it would freak her out. When I got to work and told her what happened, she was jumpy for a few hours. And it really didn't help when one of our brooms fell off the wall without us being near it. I told her someone probably didn't put it back on the book or on the bookcase properly. It seemed to calm her down just a little. Anne has been in those woods before, and she knows how scary they can be. About 5 years ago, on the 4th of July weekend, she and I were playing hide and seek with my family in the woods. We were hiding together in a very small ravine in the center of the woods. It was hidden by bushes and devil's clubs. I remember the devil's club well because I got a blister on my ankle that hurt really bad. Ann and I played rock, paper, scissors as we were hiding. We heard walking coming toward us, and we thought we were going to get caught. A rule in my family is when playing hide and seek is you're not allowed to leave your spot. We watched someone in a white hoodie and black pants walk by us. They would have seen us if they had looked to their right and down, but they didn't. We were eventually found by my older brother and walked back to the house with my auntie, who was also found. It was girls versus boys, and the boys won. It was a perfect timing as well because my mom and grandma had just finished making dinner. But as Ann and I were getting ourselves some very full plates, I realized no one was wearing a white hoodie. It's okay. They probably took it off. But also, no one was wearing black jeans. I asked my dad if anyone had changed in the bathroom or something. Maybe they had thorns in their pants or in their sleeves, but he told me he didn't think so. Ann and I told him about the person we saw walking past us. And he was worried, thinking someone was on our property. He also didn't like the thought of a trespasser in the woods with all his daughters hiding. My dad took 3 of us and my uncles and went into the woods. They were gone for about an hour. They must have checked the entire property. He took 3 of his uncles, guys. It was a misprint. My dad even called my mom and told her to ask me where we saw them. When they got back, my dad said they hadn't seen anyone and sat down in the living room with everyone else. My uncles, on the other hand, were talking very quietly. I knew only my Uncle Jay would tell me what was wrong, and I was right. It had rained a few hours before we went to play in the woods, meaning it was muddy. My Uncle Jay told Ann and me that they didn't see any footprints anywhere near the spot we were hiding, other than us 2 girls and my brothers. I was paranoid all night that I'd see the person in the woods walk by my window. The last time Ann was in those woods was when her and me and our friend T decided to go camping out there. It was the end of the summer, and us 3 girls wanted to go camping one last time before winter. We were too young to go camping by ourselves, so the next best thing was the woods on my property. Our campsite was pretty much dead center in the woods. We had my mom and dad's big tent that could fit all 5 of us, and my grandpa's 6-wheeler. My 2 friends T and N were so excited they didn't care about the stories, honestly. So I was, and I wish I wasn't. We hadn't settled in our tent and started to play with the deck of cards I'd brought with us. As it got later and as it got darker, well, it gets really dark in Alaska. We decided to get comfy in our sleeping bags so we would be warm. Ann and I wanted to tell stories. T didn't believe in the paranormal but listened to Ann and me talk about our favorite horror stories and urban legends. Ann and I were talking about the Wendigo stories would say the W instead of the actual name because we believed that saying the name would summon it. N is an Alaskan Alaskan native, and so is her family. Her mom is the one who told us to never say the creature's name. T knew what we were talking about, and I'm pretty sure she knew not to say it, but she did anyway. And then she whistled. "What exactly is this Wendigo?" T asked us. N and I whipped our heads in her direction and shouted that you should never say that word out loud. T only rolled her eyes and laughed. We shouldn't have been laughing if she knew what awaited us. It was around 1 or 2 in the morning when N woke me up. She whispered to me that she'd been awake for maybe an hour and she could hear something walking around. My dad let me bring my mom's pistol with us after we promised to be very careful with it and that I'd be the only one to touch it unless absolutely necessary. I kept it near my sleeping bag. I was on the left side of the tent. N was in the middle, and I could see T was asleep on the right side. N was a very light sleeper and was woken up by T snoring. She was trying to go back to sleep when she heard something. I listened carefully and I could hear something walking around. It wasn't very close, but it was close enough that we needed to pay attention. I thought it was maybe a moose, a bear, or something else. That was quickly shut down when I realized it sounded like it was on 2 legs. Not 4 like I was expecting. N reached over and shook T awake, putting her finger over her mouth to show T to be quiet. Then N pointed to her ears. T listened and looked, and she was confused. I shrugged my shoulders, showing I had no idea what it was. I kept my hand on my mom's pistol just in case. I got out my phone, and I saw that it was about 2:30 a.m. I texted both my mom and my dad saying that I could hear something walking around our campsite. They didn't respond. I wasn't surprised because it was past midnight and my mom had my baby brother there the week before, so he must have been asleep. We listened as it got closer to our tent. We were now scared some animal was going to rip a hole in our tent and get us. It was getting closer to my side, so as quickly as we could, N and I scooted closer to T. Then we could smell it. It smelled so much like B.O. that I could almost taste it. T covered the bottom of her face and with her blanket, and N was covering her nose with her hand. N looked to T and mouthed something that I couldn't see, but I could see that fear in T's eyes. Later I found out N had mouthed the word Wendigo to her. We stayed quiet out of fear. We refused to even move. Even breathing felt too loud. We didn't want to let the thing outside know that we were in the tent. Whatever was out there, it felt very evil. I tried to listen as close as I could, but it was hard because my heart was beating so loud. I'm pretty sure N and T could hear it. The sound of walking went around and stopped near the front of our tent. I was ready to shoot whatever it was through the tent. It was only a few seconds of silence, but it felt like hours. Then we heard the sound of a gunshot. We all jumped and N gasped. It was loud and I knew who it was. Our neighbor had a large collection of shotguns and would have target practice almost every day and sometimes late at night. I don't know what my neighbor was shooting at in the middle of the night, but I believed and tried to tell myself it was targets. Well, he saved our lives that night. He wasn't close enough to be shooting at the thing outside our tent or even know that the girls were camping out there. We could hear the thing run past us and toward the river away from us, my house and our neighbor. It was fast. We sat there a long minute, huddled together on the side of the tent, shaking, and asked in a hushed voice if we should go back to the house, but I was too afraid to leave the tent. I was scared the sound of the six-wheeler would bring it back, and I didn't want to leave all of our stuff out there. So we just went back to sleep. We were all cuddled together, pressed tight against one another. I don't think we could have even gotten any closer. And I'm not sure if N really did sleep that night. The next morning, when we had the courage to leave the tent, we could see small moose prints around our tent. I tried to ignore the fact that it looked like it was standing on 2 legs, and I just hoped it was a curious baby moose. N and T came into my house a bunch after that. We never went camping in the woods again. But what I saw in the woods I know was walking on 2 legs. I've hunted with my dad. This thing walked on 2 legs and had a very long stride. It had walked all around our tent and had sat out there, it looked like, and watched us in a muddy spot and then had left after the gunshot. Whatever this thing was, I'm pretty sure it was a Wendigo. We have a lot of them here in Alaska. It was one of the most frightening cases I've ever been in, and I wanted to share this story with you guys. Thank you so much. That is a very scary story. I would hate to be camping and have something walking around my tent that sounded like a moose or hooves. And there's no telling what was walking around your tent. There's so many cryptids around anymore. But I would say there was definitely something out there, and your neighbor target practicing or shooting. It probably thought it was shooting at it, or it was coming, and it ran off in fear of the gun. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Until next time, guys, keep your head on a swivel. Don't be something's dinner, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks, guys.